This is Let Love Begin, a podcast for the recovering brokenhearted, ready to heal and reclaim their enthusiasm. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to have a chat with you. It's like talking to an old friend. I love it.
I know, always. Honestly, it really is. It really is.
I know. Oh, thank you.
I'm so happy to talk to you anytime, Talia. You just say the word and I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so sweet. So the title of this episode is very close to my heart because it's actually also why I started the Rebel Love blog and why we ended up talking in the first place initially when we did the Let Love Begin summit together. The title is Letting Go is a Process, but How Do We Start? The $1 million question.
It is, right? It is, how do we start? So we are always letting go. We are always very subconsciously letting go of ideas and of people and of feelings and of just, information. And so, when it comes to letting go of love or a relationship or things like that, we have to get really conscious about what it means to let go. And so often, because we're letting go all the time, it's just part of being alive. We're not really paying attention to how or what that process looks like. We're just moving through the motions of it. It's like our reticular activating systems we can only take in so much information. So we don't really notice the car commercials till we need to buy a car. And so it's kind of the same with when we need to let go for love. Like all of a sudden we're hyper alert to, oh my God, how do I do this? How do I start this process of letting go? And I think, starting the process of letting go is really about knowing what letting go means. And it's about knowing that it's something you're ready to do. Because if you're not ready to do it, you're not going to do it. Like you could have the easiest, clearest process in the world for doing anything, but if you're not ready to do it, you're not going to do it. It's the same reason why half of the packages that come to me from, free people sit in my bathroom, because I don't want to try them on and think about, sending them back and go through the whole process of like, am I keeping this? Am I leaving it? What am I doing? So I just leave it until I can't stand looking at it anymore. And then I know that I need to start.
I'm ready. Now I'm ready.
I mean, that's a very simple, kind of a weird metaphor, but you know what I mean? It's not like you're going to put your significant other in the corner and be like, am I ready to let this person go? But there are cues that we can look for to tell us when it's time to let go, and then understand in the context of those cues, what does it really mean to do it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I was just like, before you started talking about being ready, I was like, but it doesn't work unless you're ready. Because I remember with me, I wasn't ready for years. I want, like, in my mind, the idea of letting go was great because then I could move on. But I was so terrified of that. I was so terrified of letting go, because if I let go, then I made it mean all these things, like that I would forget or that it didn't mean anything. And that's not what it meant at all.
Or that you'd be alone
and
unlovable and never find love again. And you would be the only one in the whole world that would, everybody else in the whole free world would have, a partner and love. And there we would be, right, without those things, because that's really the fear. Is that, we don't want to go through life without love. Those are things that we want to have. And so, those are things that really can keep us stuck. But yeah, we have to be ready. We have to be fully ready. And so what does that look like to be ready?
Yes, let's talk about that.
I mean, what it looks like to be ready is like looking at other people and other people's relationships and thinking, oh, I wish I had that. Or like looking at other things in life and thinking, I'm longing for that. I'm uncomfortable with what I have. Or maybe we're feeling it in our body. Like we're feeling sick, or we're feeling stressed, or we're feeling new emotions, things that maybe we've been avoiding that are starting to kind of come up, like the beach ball, that we hold down. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. And all of a sudden it can manifest in other ways. It can manifest in illness. It can manifest in new stress. It can manifest in our looking at our partners in a different way, looking at ourselves in a different way. We can start having that really terrible talk track that I hate, that, we are at risk for when we find that, because you know what, Talia, I think we know in our bodies, we know in our minds when something is not working. We know when it's time to move on. all too often we stay. We stay because there are so many reasons, some of the things that I said before, but we know when it's time to move on. And if we don't move on, that's when we start to berate ourselves, right? Why am I staying here? I'm not really happy, but I don't know how to move forward. And then we start having fights with our partner. And then we start thinking negatively about ourselves. And so all of these things, like, they're like little cues of dissatisfaction. When we feel dissatisfied really anywhere inside of our relationship, but like it could be a job, it could be a friendship, it could be inside of a situation that's making us uncomfortable. We tend to push those things away because what they're asking us to do is hard.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable. So we look away, we look away, we look away until we just can't look away anymore. And that's when we're ready. That's when we're ready to really let go in every sense of what that word means.
It's interesting because what's coming up for me when you describe that is also being fed up, because the scenario you were using was we were in a relationship. But for me, it was like, sorry, excuse me, I wasn't in a relationship. I just was holding on to one that had already ended, and then I got fed up and I was like, fuck it, Talia, stop doing this. Like you are recreating this. You're sitting in this pain when you don't have to be. Just let it go. Just let
it's such a good point, because so many of us do that. We sit inside of it because we're in pain over the loss. So there's grief. B, we're afraid to let it go, because if we let it go, then what? Then we actually either have to feel it or do something that we might not be ready to do next. And so many people who go through that and they struggle with holding on to a relationship that's over, they keep themselves stuck because they're afraid it'll happen again. They don't trust themselves to make a better or different choice going forward. Or maybe they feel that they don't deserve something better or that it's not available to them. They take with them whatever happened inside of that relationship needs to be examined with love and caring for ourselves and acknowledged and accepted so that we can move forward, so that we can let go of it. And, it's really interesting because I know we've talked before about like what it means to let go. I had such an interesting conversation with a friend of mine last night at dinner. And this is such an important part of letting go. It was for me when I was in my own story around letting go, which is, letting go is really not about accepting a situation or normalizing a situation or coping inside of a situation or even giving up. There's nothing defeatist about letting go. Letting go is about really true detachment. But when letting go is so powerful, and this is what we talked about last night, was when we let go with love. And so if we let go of that person that we're holding on to that's no longer part of our life with anger and bitterness, we're still stuck. We're still stuck. And we have to identify, who are we really angry and bitter at? Because people are just there to teach us things. We bring them in because we have those lessons to learn. I really do believe this. And so, yes, it's painful. And maybe they had very bad behavior on some level. But at the same time, it's better for us to release with love. That's the way to move forward. And it's interesting because, in my own story, when I released my ex with love and I moved on and I found my husband and I got married and my ex then passed and I grieved for him, my husband was very confused. He didn't understand how you could leave a relationship and not feel angry. And he's since, come to learn that and understand that, that's the way to go. That's the way to do it, is that you can leave somebody who was wrong for you with love for them. And I think it's very freeing. And so how you do that is you make that really about you. It's really not about the other person.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I was just about to say. You're taking control of your own life and owning your own emotions, not letting all the anger overcome you, and then be the person that pushes them away because you're hurt. You're like, yeah, you really, really hurt me. And yeah, your behavior was really, really bad. And I'm absolutely not excusing that. But I'm going to let you go with love for me, not for you.
That's right. Because it's really, that other person is really not ever about them. It's about what we bring into our lives and what we accept for ourselves and what we think we're worth. That's really it. And the anger that we feel towards another person who may have wronged us is really misdirected. It's really the anger we feel for ourselves for bringing it in and potentially bringing it in over and over and over because we're not really learning those lessons. We're still too focused on them, but it's never about them. Never. It's always about us. And so it's always about what can we take from it? Why did we bring this person in? Because again, I really do believe we know. I knew when I met my ex-boyfriend that he was never, after a certain amount of time, he was never going to marry me or give me what I wanted. I knew for years, but I stayed. There must have been some payoff in that for me. And that's what we have to find is what is the payoff for staying in this situation that's not giving us the things that we really want.
Yep. 100%. Man, you are just kicking goals today. It's 100%.
Well,
what's the payoff?
It's just at a certain point in life, I think you just want to be happy and figure it out. And you get to a point where you're just like, okay, I got my ass kicked enough times here. What am I doing? And this is not to throw shade. This is not to put anybody down, because there's nothing wrong with anybody who is struggling to find their way anywhere in life. I mean, it could be a relationship you've got, one you've left behind, one you're still thinking about from high school. It could be a job. It could be a friendship, it could be a friendship that you've lost but all of it is designed for us to really understand our part, and not from a punishment, negative, bad, we're bad kind of way, but we bring everything into our life for a reason, everything. And we may not always understand at first why we're bringing it in, but hopefully along the way, we get to figure that out. Because once we do, that informs the next choice, which informs the next choice. And if we're not stopping to figure out why we're holding on to these things that just don't serve us, we're never going to be able to level up our choices and actually get where it is that we want to go. And that's the work. And it's hard work. And it can be really painful work. And it can be shocking work because we get to learn things about ourselves that maybe we really don't want to know, or about our parents that are hard because we love our parents. We want to love our parents, or about another person that we want to love, or we want to think a certain way about that, changing that is a loss. Grief comes in a million forms. So I always say big wild love is an act of courage.
Yeah.
An act of courage and confidence.
It so is. And this whole conversation, what I've just been coming up for me is that this is the work. People say, oh, they haven't done the work. You've got to do the work. All of these things that are really uncomfortable and that you have to keep doing again and again. And it's relentless. The work never stops. Even when you find the person, your husband.
Absolutely.
Work together. You find somebody who wants to go there with you, who's willing to do the work with you. And that's what makes it work. When you're both willing to do the work, take responsibility and go through life together, because it will get uncomfortable.
Right. Who's willing to do their own work, who's willing to do their own work. I admire my husband so much because his life story made that understanding hard for him, that we can leave anyone in a place of love. But over time and over the years, now he's so there and has really made that old relationship, that person who was so important to me, a part of his life too. And so it makes me feel so good. We learn from each other. If we're doing it right, we're finding partners who we get to learn from too, who have done their own work, because then we're on the level playing field. If I have big, wild love, which is that sense of self-love that gives me the courage and the confidence I need to let go, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. If my partner has the same thing, we're the best versions of ourselves. We're not bringing dysfunction. I'm not dependent on him for my happiness from a how I value myself place. He's not looking to me to validate his value. He can do that for himself. And that's very attractive, by the way, to be with someone who can validate their own self-worth. It's like, I don't know if you've ever noticed, like when you meet happy people, like I notice this even in my jobs, when I work with happy people, there's no drama.
Yeah.
They're not trying to get anything from me or get up on me or get over on me. They're rooting for my success as much as I'm rooting for theirs because they've done their work of big, wild love. They're happy. They know their value. They don't need anything from me. They don't need to compete with me. They don't need to be manipulative. They don't need to scoot around me. They don't need to be jealous. They just are happy people who want to lift and champion and be lifted and championed. That's it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This is just gold nugget after gold nugget again. Okay, so I feel like we did cover it briefly, but let's go into what is Big Wild Love and how did you discover Big Wild Love?
Yeah. So Big Wild Love is my version of self-love. And, we talk about self-love a lot these days. We did not always talk about self-love all the time. And self-love can mean a million different things. It can mean I'm going to go get my nails done. I'm going to go get a pedicure or a manicure, a massage, or I'm going to take the day off and give myself a mental health day. And those are all amazing things to do. That's self-care. That does feed into self-love. That's self-care. This is really self-love that gives you the courage that you need to make hard choices and bold moves on behalf of yourself. So it's knowing that no matter what happens, if you let go of your partner or the idea of your partner or the grief from your partner or the job or whatever, you will be okay because you've got you and you love you and you know your value. And so you know that you can move forward and find what it is that you're looking for and not accept less. You know that the things that you want are available to you and that you deserve them because you've done that work to cultivate your own big, wild love. And the byproduct of big, wild love is that you begin to attract other big, wild, loving humans into your life because non-big, wild, loving humans don't want anything to do with big people who have big, wild love. They don't know what to do with that. They want people who want the drama they do. They want people who are on their playing field, right? Maybe there's some who are ready to cultivate that big wild love. So yeah, they're drawn to it just the same way we're drawn to things that we want in our life. And I came around to the idea of big wild love after I gave my TED talk called The Unstoppable Power of Letting Go. And that talk is almost at 5 million views now.
Wow. Congratulations, Jill.
Well, thank you. But it's really not me. It's really not me. It's the fact that we are all stuck and we stay too long in places.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so it's a message that is so incredibly universal.
And resonates, yeah.
It really does. And so after I gave that talk, I started to hear from people, women and men from all over the world, as you know, as I sit here in the States and you are there in Australia.
Yeah.
I would interview many of these people for my book. And what I learned was the biggest common denominator it was constant across every single person that I spoke to is that they lacked big, wild love. They were stuck because they did not appreciate or understand their own value. And so they had absolutely no currency to use to buy something else. They were stuck. And so I thought that was just so interesting because, you could teach people, like we said at the outset, you could give people a process for anything, but if they're not ready to engage with that process, it doesn't matter. It's useless. And I learned that without big, wild love, I can give you 500 processes for letting go, but you just won't do it because you won't know that if you let go, you will be okay. The things that you want are within your control, are within your power. But if you don't recognize your own value, if you don't have the ability to take risks because you know that if you jump, you are the net, you don't need a net outside of yourself, you are at the actual net, you just won't jump. So I thought it was really important to focus on big, wild love. That's why I named my book Big Wild Love, then The Unstoppable Power of Letting Go, because we're in a crisis of self-love. We don't recognize our value. We're in a very hard world right now.
Mm.
We've got lots of really complicated things happening, pandemic, politics, just
Wars.
everything.
Yeah.
And wars, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all been, it all evokes a sense of danger and a lack of security. And I think that's even makes it harder for us to be bold. It makes it harder for us because it's all attached to safety. And so even if we're with someone who's not great or not serving us, maybe we feel safe. And that's more attractive because we're wired biologically for safety. So it's really all connected. But when you have the big wild love piece, yeah, you're still scared. Yeah, you still feel the danger. Yes, you're still uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen. If I leave this relationship or this friendship or this job or this home or this country or whatever it is, there are no guarantees in life. Anything could happen at any time.
Mm.
But you also know that you're worth more than just settling for what you really don't want.
Yeah.
And so you're willing to make that trade-off.
I feel like when you wake up from that and you, well, this was my experience anyway. I was like, oh gosh, like why did I waste all that time?
Right.
But there's also a lesson in that. It's like, okay, my brain goes, all right, yes, you wasted time. Don't do it again. Now you have an opportunity.
Sure, that's one way to think about it. But was it really a waste of time? Like, I don't know. I spent 12 years in a relationship with someone. And honestly, I thought, oh my God, I wasted 12 years. But no, I really didn't. Because we forget what life was like in the day-to-day of that. And there was a reason that we needed to be there. And there was a reason that we stayed. And I love what you say about like, you kind of wake up to it because you really do. It is, and I talk about this, as you know, in my book about epiphanies, but we really do wake up to it if we're paying attention. If we're paying attention and we are at the point where we're just like, I don't want this anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do what I have to do to get this. If that starts with me looking in the mirror and being really honest with myself and doing that internal, dig, then I'll do it.
Before this call, we were talking about a relationship I was describing that I had where I said the writing was on the wall. The writing was on the wall the whole time. I knew. And it was funny because all my friends were telling me, he's not it. This guy's not it. Like, I know you. And a really close friend of mine, I asked her, and I really appreciate her response. She waited, she paused and chose her words carefully. And she said, he dims your light. And I was like, wow, that was really, really profound.
That just gave me chills.
I know. And
that's a good friend.
She's amazing. She's incredible. And even the fact that when I asked her, she said, I never want to say bad things about somebody's partner because that could be your life partner. And I don't want to bring him down.
That's right.
But she's like, ever since you've been with him, you haven't been happy. It's been a constant battle. And you've got this light in you, and that's what makes you you. And he dims that light. And it just like hit me in the chest. And I was like, holy crap.
And that is such a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's you standing in a spotlight that's getting dark. And I love that she said that to you. That's amazing.
I know.
That's amazing. It's a wonderful question to ask in the situation that we find ourselves holding on to. Does it dim our light?
Yeah.
Even prior to that, do we see our own light? Do we even know that we have a light? Have we ever even looked at ourselves in that light? There's all kinds of work because we all have light. We all have light and dark. I mean, that's just physics. We all have light and dark. And so we need to understand that we have that. We need to embrace that light. Whatever we have to do to find our way to it, we have to get there. And then we have to stand in it. And then we have to make a commitment to ourselves that we will pay attention and recognize when someone is dimming our light. I talk about the tunnel of pain in my book. We've talked about this before, I know, but it's like going through that process of letting go, moving through that process of grief is like walking into a dark tunnel alone. I call it the tunnel of pain. You walk and you walk and you walk till you get to the light. Some
Mm.
people walk and they don't like it. It's so hard for them. They turn around, but you have to keep going so that you can get either in the light or back to the light. But you have to know when you're stuck in there. And that takes a lot of self-awareness and the readiness to change.
Yeah, and the responsibility. Like this person who I was with was saying like finding something to latch onto and blame me for rather than take responsibility. He was actually worried about something that hadn't happened yet, a hypothetical. You're worried about a hypothetical thing that has not even happened at all once since we've been together. To me, that says a lot more about you than about me. You're just not taking responsibility for anything. And then even, and also gaslighting me and me realizing like thankfully I've got really good friends that really help me kind of see, but it's like, well, and like you say, that big wild love of like, I'm worth more than that. Like, I'm not going to let somebody treat me like that. Like, yeah. And It's really, really hard because another thing you said before is like, it's not even I'm grieving for you. I'm grieving for what we could have had. I'm grieving for the future that we could have had.
But that was not real. And that's the other thing that we do. We all do it. But it's like we immediately, future quest.
Yeah.
We need to be where our feet are, right? And we're grieving for something that never happened because it's not real.
It's also hypothetical.
It's a figment. It's a hope. It's a wish.
Yeah.
But it's not a promise, So, and we all do it. We all do it. Talia, I mean, I know I did it for a long, like anytime I would meet a new guy, I would be like, And I was like all the way down the road, in the meantime, like we're having dinner. So,
yeah.
you're just slow your roll, sister. And it's like a conscious thing that we have to do. And we do, like, if we have the big wild love, we might laugh at ourselves about that. And we might say like, oh, okay, no, that's the old, don't worry. Don't be so afraid. Don't be so worried that it's not going to happen. If it's what you want and you make the right choices in the service of knowing your own value, then the things that you want, barring the limitations of space and time and all the other things, will be yours. And I do believe that. We get to choose those things. We have to remind ourselves of that sometimes.
I want to try and explain something that we've talked about, but I want to kind of approach it from a different angle. We've talked about big wild love being that self-love, but to bring it back to that light analogy, it's like when you do the work on yourself, you turn up your own light. And by turning up your own light, that is incredibly attractive. So people are attracted to that, right? It's like moths to a flame.
It's a byproduct.
They want to be in your light.
Totally.
So when you do the work.
The healthy people, Talia, healthy people.
They can see
there'd be a million people who want to be in your life when you're dysfunctional or you're sad or you're confused or you're not acting in your own self-interests. I can't tell you, and this is no slight against men because I love men, but some of the men that have arrived on my TED Talk, they don't love it. They don't want an empowered woman of value who is not afraid to be bold in her life, which says more about them.
Yep, 100%.
So I actually think sometimes it makes you more attractive to the right people, but it makes the field smaller because, it's like there's not as many of us out there. And this is not a deterrent. This should actually be a reason for people to want to do it because it sure does save you a lot of heartache with the masses of people who have not yet cultivated their own big wild love. So you are becoming more discerning in that process, and the right people will find their way to you. They will be attracted to you. The other ones, the ones that comment on my talk, like, I don't want this woman who thinks so much of herself. They're not going to want to be with you. Good riddance, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Maybe they're super cute and charming and you're not going to figure that out right away. So they're saving you like a lot of heartache and time by just moving along because they're not attracted to that.
Yeah. Turn up your own light.
Yes. That is so good. That friend, go buy her a present.
Yeah. She's been my friend since we were 8. And we both, how funny is this? We both became vegetarian at 10 years old and we're both still vegetarian. Isn't that crazy? 30 years later.
That's impressive.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I'm just giving away my age there. Damn
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
That's
she's a
awesome.
great friend.
That's
She's
awesome.
very, very wise. She's like a wise old monk.
And she's a champion for you. So isn't it so interesting? It's a phenomenon that I see, and I'm sure that you've seen, strong women, either strong women in friendships, strong women, in work or their careers, but then they're like with partners who diminish them.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's so hard to see, isn't it? It's really hard to watch. It's like
Yeah,
you're this
it's no judgment.
incredibly
It's just
yeah.
an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, let's go back to that. Let's talk about so we talked about we can't really let go until we're ready, but how do we get ready? What if we know we're not ready? We're in this place where we know we're not ready and we're like, okay, I'm ready to be ready, but I don't know how to be ready yet.
Right.
Is that are we ever that conscious? or
I think
like how do
so.
we
I think
Yeah,
so.
okay.
I think so. I think I do know people who have said, I know that I need to make better choices, because that's really what it comes down to, right? I know that I need to make
Yeah.
better choices. I just don't know how. And I think part of that starts with understanding ourselves more deeply. And so it's acknowledging and accepting the choices we've made. It's getting still to ask ourselves the questions of, why did I make those choices? I'm a big fan of journaling. I know people who journal, I know people who swim, I know people who exercise. They find it, like, some of those answers through exercise. I know people who find it through communities, who find it through therapy, who find it, in a myriad of different ways. But I do believe that when you start finally asking the right questions, your subconscious mind starts to process and deliver the answers. So I don't think that it's an accident that we start focusing and asking questions about, why are we making certain choices, and we start to get clear and start to get some answers around those questions. I think the problem is we're not asking those questions when we're making those choices on autopilot that feel good in the moment or feel right, even though they're dysfunctional. I mean, they may be, we may be choosing them because they're comfortable to us. We may be with someone who is not great to us, but reminds us of a parent that we're working things out with, or that reminds us of an ex, a previous experience that we had that we're trying to still work out in this new place. Or they speak to, some deficiency we think we have in ourselves. Like I talk about this in my book, and very freely. I had a mother, a very loving mother, who was very hard on me about how I looked and being thin and all those things. And so I left with, the belief that I had to be, a really small size to be loved. And if I wasn't, and someone was with me, I was darn lucky to have them, because I didn't
Right.
deserve any better. So it's really about the process of uncovering those beliefs inside of us, and the wounds and the emotions that we have stored that are driving our choices. It's our subconscious that is driving our choices. And so when we get still and we ask those questions, we're more likely to start getting in touch with that subconscious. And when we understand that, we can align it to our consciousness. And so, if I always say, like, if our conscious mind wants a long-term relationship, but our subconscious is like, no, 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 that's terrible. I had that once and it was really painful and I lost it. And no, no, no. They're not going to sit together on the bus, which is driving wherever it's going. So, and that was, a situation for me. I mean, I chose a boyfriend because the one before him got engaged, we're close. And then I found out he had a million girlfriends everywhere else. I'm not going
Wow.
through that again.
Gosh.
I'll take this
Yeah.
guy. He's cute. He's funny. He's smart. He's nice. And he's here. He's never going to marry me, but hey, that's great. Because if he never offers that up to me, then I'll never lose it. It's not mine to lose again. Only when I understood that subconsciously, how that other experience had wounded me and gave me this protection, this need to self-protect, that I was able to say, whoa, but I really do want that. Like, consciously, I want more. subconsciously I'm too afraid. I feel unsafe going for more because I don't want to go through that again. But once I could acknowledge that, I could say, okay, I'm done with this now. Boop, and I can move forward.
Yeah.
So we got to line those two things up. Otherwise, that's crazy. Things get all kind of crazy.
So if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, what are the best questions to start with? If we're asking the wrong questions.
Yeah. So
what are the right questions for us?
Right. So I think it starts with, and I have in my book would help people because I have a whole section on questions, and I have like a whole day long 2-day detox you could do to start sifting through those questions. But it's really about diving into, the belief system. So I believe love is, I believe relationships are, I believe I am. It's like really journaling around some of those prompts. And when I say journaling, you're not writing. This is not like finding the perfect prose or, creating something that you want to publish or you want to share with other people. I mean, this is really just like stream of consciousness writing. And you do it long enough on the same question and stuff will come out of you that you will be, wow, really shocked by. It's so powerful because when you start writing, you get all this stuff out of here, the day-to-day stuff. Then eventually what's hiding in here just starts to come up and you get to learn a lot of things about yourself. So, I mean, you can start with the basic questions. If you're in a situation, you can just ask the question, why am I holding on to this person who was horrible to me? Do it every day. Give yourself 10 minutes and just freeform it every day for a week and see what comes through.
What's the payoff?
What's the payoff? What is the payoff? And you got to also not be afraid to claim the things that you want. And I know that was an issue for me. I was afraid to say that I wanted marriage because if I put it out there and I didn't get it, then what? If I put it out there and I did get it, then what? Depending on where you're coming from. And that's where the big wild love comes in. That you know your value, which gives you courage and confidence, which inspires you to state and claim the things you want and to say, this isn't what I want. I'm going to move on. It's hard. I'm going to cry. I'm going to eat a lot of cake. Probably going to gain weight. My knees are going to get chubby, but it's okay.
Of all the things, my knees are going to get chubby.
Of all the things. Right.
Oh, hilarious.
But I'm going to be okay. And I'm just going to walk up those hills and the knees will de-chubify and everything will be fine.
De-chubify. Hilarious. All right, Jill, let's talk a little bit about your book. Tell us about your book and where people can find it and how people can get in touch with you if they would like to.
Yes. So my book is called Big Wild Love, The Unstoppable Power of Letting Go. And it's really a book that I wrote as a result of the talk going viral, all these people coming at me with the same questions. So I'm like, okay. Plus I've been a lifelong writer. So I'm always writing. In fact, I'm working on a new book right now. It's a novel.
Ooh, exciting.
But I'm so proud. I'm really so proud of it, Talia. Like, it's a book that has really made an impact from people that I hear, but even with someone in my own family, which means the world to me, who read this book and was in a bad relationship. And he read this book a couple of times and then one day closed it and said, I'm done.
Wow.
And moved on and found someone new who's wonderful. So I feel really proud of this book. If you're stuck anywhere, it will give you a process for moving forward. It will give you the cues. It will give you exercise. It will give you all the things that you need. And it will continue to tell you my story of how I let go of a 12-year relationship and moved on to find love, to find the love that I wanted to cultivate, my big wild love, and find the love that I really wanted. And so I'm really proud of it. You don't have to get it. You don't have to buy it. I'm not trying to sell it to you, but if you're stuck, it could help you.
It's a great book. Buy it.
I'm really proud of it. It's won a lot of awards and I'm just really touched by that and the talk. And I'm so happy to have been able to be helpful in the world. And that's really not Pollyanna. That's just sort of how I really feel about it. You can buy it on Amazon. You can go to my website, letgoforit.com. You can, find me at Let Go For It on Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say is, you get my book, whatever you do, just to your listeners, just know that wherever you are, if you're stuck, you don't have to stay there. That is not your life sentence. That is not your life sentence. You can always make the choice to do the work, to cultivate the big wild love, and then use it to let go. That's my spiel.
That's like such a beautiful wrap up. Jill, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it, as always. I mean, these interviews just kind of write themselves, really, don't they? Because we've just got so much to talk about. This is so just gold nugget to gold nugget. I really, really appreciate you. And yeah, I, of course, hope to have you back and chat more about this another time.
Yes. And back to you, Tali. Always enjoy talking to you. And I know we'll talk soon.
Ciao.
Ciao.
This podcast is a Rebel Love production. To find the links mentioned in this episode, go to rebellove.com/let love begin. That was so good. I didn't even look at my notes. So I love how we just launched into it too.